My name's Amanda, and I'm from Canada, but right now I'm living in India. And I am here to share about my near-death experience. This happened in August of 2017, and I was the passenger in a car, and my ex-partner was driving. And we were traveling on a high mountain road in Canada, and the road was like here, and then the mountain went up like this, and on the other side of the road the mountain dropped off, and there was a concrete guardrail here about the height of an adult's waist. And as we were driving, an oncoming car that was in the only other lane, he lost control and he swerved into our lane and was headed for us straight on. And so my ex-partner swerved the car that we were in, and we came over to the little gravel shoulder that was just right before the mountain face went up. And with that sudden jerk and then hitting the gravel of the shoulder, our car completely lost control and it started to spin at least twice horizontally. And it ended up in the wrong lane. And we collided with another car. We collided with the car that was behind the guy that we were trying to avoid. And then our car flipped upside down and it landed on that concrete guardrail just before the drop off of the cliff. And it landed upside down with the wheels up and the roof crushed, and the front seat and the hood kind of dangling over the edge, and the trunk and the back seat dangling on the edge of the road. And so my experience of this car accident goes like this. So as soon as our car lost control, I had this very split second understanding in myself. It's time to die. We're not surviving. This is it. And in that split second, I closed my eyes and I leaned back into the seat of the car and I relaxed my muscles. And I did everything in that second that I could to try and prepare for a peaceful death. And looking back, I kind of do this on airplanes, like when the airplane's taking off, it's too late to change anything. So just chill. And what happened as soon as I did that is what is the big surprise, and what came into my out of body experience. I went into this relaxing mode and suddenly all these things changed. This happened very, very quickly, but looking back, I can kind of go through it step by step. The first thing that happened was I lost my 5 senses. I couldn't hear anything. It felt like I had earplugs or there was just no noise. Everything was black. I couldn't feel any sensations like my skin. I couldn't feel that I was touching anything. And most glaringly obvious was I felt this weightlessness where I didn't have the weight of a body. And that's a really hard thing to describe because we are only used to having a body. And coming back later, I realized just how heavy our body is. We've just had nothing to compare it to, but we're always lugging around a few hundred pounds. So I've lost my 5 senses, and yet my awareness, my perception, the volume on that has gone way up. I'm suddenly like more awake than I've ever been, not nervous, not agitated, but just more clear. And I noticed that I'm in this dark, pillowy place. It wasn't dark, like it was not frightening. It was almost like a never-ending, warm, dark cloud, a little bit pillowy, a little bit feathery, a little bit feminine feeling, very, very safe feeling. And that was the most safe and secure I have ever felt or experienced in my total memory. And the other thing that kicked in at this point was this familiarity. It felt so familiar, but I couldn't exactly place it. And not only did it feel familiar, it felt more like home than I've ever experienced on earth. And I have a good family. I have a house that I grew up in that I would have considered home. But this was something that was way beyond that. This went prior to this life. It went into what seemed like long, long history of coming and going. I've come and gone from this place. And this life on earth as Amanda, you know, is one of the places that I've been. But this dark, pillowy place seemed like this familiar zone outside of the body that I have come and gone from so many times. And the next thing that I noticed about being here, once I felt that security and that safety that was beyond words starting to land, was that I wasn't alone in this place. Even though I didn't see any ancestors or religious figures, I could feel the presence of many, many, many beings. It felt as though I was being watched, lovingly watched. Curiosity was kind of coming at me, but mostly love in all directions, like I was being returned and reunited with where I truly come from. And that feeling of being known was more than, you know, being known on earth. And to the best of the most, you know, loving family and friends that we have on earth, this went beyond that. It was like the presence that was watching me, that was many, but totally united as one, knew me inside and out, knew me as more than Amanda, knew me as Amanda, had probably been watching over me, but knew me through other lifetimes that I had lived, but knew my true nature that is eternal. And not only knew it, loved it, respected it, honored it, welcomed this reunion so much. And there was no feeling on my side of needing to hide anything, needing to apologize for anything, needing to make excuses for anything, needing to feel ashamed or awkward about anything. It was like the pureness of me was meeting the pureness of them, whoever they were. And I feel like they were the highest divine spirits or beings of deceased humans. Angels were there, angelic hierarchy beyond what I even understand as a human being exists. All in this presence, this oneness joined together. And I can't exactly say how I knew who these beings were. It was so much more a feeling and telepathic communication. It was kind of like telepathic welcoming. And it's kind of like, the best I can kind of compare it to is if you have like a really close family member or friend, and they really care about you and they really know you and accept you, that you're number one person, and you haven't seen each other in a while. And on that reunion, that reuniting, it's just so amazing because you really feel seen for who you are. You feel missed. Well, it was like that, but like times so much more, in quality and intensity, and so many more beings. And so even though this whole thing was probably seconds, like several seconds of Earth time, it was almost like Earth time had paused for me, fully stopped. Like someone put pause on a video, and then I continued here for however much spirit time, out of body time it required for me to take in all of this, to experience it, to be reunited. And so there was no messages to bring to humanity. There was no forecasting my future, religious message. There was nothing like that. What happened was actually what I believe was more important than any of that stuff. And that was me knowing very suddenly who I really am, where I really come from, and the quality of that, which is love, innocence, and kind of like the element of being a curious explorer across lives, but mostly love and innocence and connection with the oneness, connection with all that is. And that my spirit, while it was visiting this dark, pillowy place, was in the same resonance, was in the same vibration, very temporarily, with these out of body spirit family. And so I woke up, or I came back out of that earth seconds. A few seconds later, we're hanging upside down in our car. We're kind of like crunched over in the fetal position because the roof is crushed. And we didn't have neither of us had any serious injuries. We were suddenly fully back. I could hear people again. It was like someone had slowly removed earplugs for me. My sight was back. It was like kind of waking up from a dream, even though it had only been a couple seconds. And that feeling of belonging, true belonging, and bliss and love was just permeating myself. I was so at peace. That safety and that secure feeling, it was all through me. And so some people let us out of the car and, called emergency services, and, there's like chaos on the highway and all that sort of thing. And I remember as soon as I was able to get out of the car, sitting on the concrete guardrail, and there's like metal and like camping equipment and stuff's just like falling over the edge and banging around, and just the most chaos ever. But for me, I was just like taking in the energy and the bliss of the trees and the valley. And I was like, whoa, I'm feeling connected to the goodness of all the things in nature that I see in this moment. Like I was having this spiritual moment. And, people were kind of worried that I was in shock, and they were just like, hey, like, this kind of thing. And I could see them, I could hear them. It was all fine. But I just wanted to take this in because I didn't know how long this was going to last. I realized, okay, I'm back on earth. I'm back in my body. But this is who I really am. This is how I experience and feel when I'm on the other side. That's how they do it there too. And I've got a little bit of it on earth. Well, in this moment, still a lot of it here on earth in my body. Like, I want to hold on to this. I want to spread this. I want to live like this. I want to hold on to this. So that's what happened for me that day. So during those couple of months, I was still in this blissed out state. I was in my house, just kind of chilling on the couch, listening to music, going for walks in nature. And I very naively thought that I would be able to spend the rest of my life like this. I thought this was my new normal. That's how real this was. And so when I looked at people on the street and smiled, it was like in myself, I knew who they really were because I knew who I really was. And people on the other side, it would make sense that all other human beings, are also in that oneness. And so I would see other people in maybe a bit of a naive way, but in a very way that I knew that they were also made of innocence and love. And I thought I would be able to live like that forever. And it actually did last for a long time. It was probably up to 6 months of like a very extreme form of this. One of my spiritual teachers that helped me during that time explained that when the body, mind, spirit is in the right place at the right time, anything that is kind of like stuffed away inside of us that's not in alignment with our best possible future can come up to be purged, to be expelled, to be cleaned out. Because when we're raising our vibration and we're wanting to move on to higher levels of spiritual development and joy in this world, there are things that are inside of us that are not compatible. And so that's what happened with me. And what I will say is I'm amazed at how much stuff happens to us. And not all of it has to be like life and death, you know, direct abuse. They just have to be things that affect the younger, sensitive part of us. And so after 2 to 3 years, those things would come in through for a couple of weeks here, a couple of weeks there, but then there'll be like 3 or 4 months of like what I would call normal life. And I would feel like I was back to myself. And so even up to this day, I'm still integrating everything. It was like the accident somehow cut open that veil that's between the conscious waking world and the subconscious of all of our old memories and energies. And then it's just coming and going, trying to get cleaned out and sorted. So when people are going through the dark night of the soul, this is actually very normal and good that this is happening, but it's also good to know what to do.